Hello everyone and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Now, in this video I'm just going to go through the campaign roster, recording the consequences of the scenario which I just completed in the previous video with my Soviet squad. So the battle is over, that horrendous two-part battle where we somehow fought off a squad of elite German infantry. And now comes the, I must admit, rather doleful task of, I suppose, as in real life, going through the campaign roster after going through the unit roster, I should say, to work out what's happened to everyone, what the consequences of the action is. Now, some of this I should have been recording over the course of the game, but I got a little bit overexcited and caught up in events. So I'm going to do a bit of it retrospectively, but I'm going to work down the list. You can see I've already made a start with some, but I'll talk you through what I've done and finish the job. And just see what state everyone's in and what I have to do to sort out whoever's left. So, working down the list, we unfortunately lost Sergeant Rostov during the battle. Those two were not present. Private Yastrabov died as well in the first part of the engagement. Private Storchillo survived. He routed out during the first battle. So the good news for me is that he comes back. I should have checked his route box as soon as it happened, but I neglected to do it. So Storchillo is back and he is alive. That's the good news. Unfortunately, because he routed out, he has to suffer a reduction to either his morale or his panic. Now, his morale was 3 and his panic rating was 3. And normally you can choose which you want to reduce, but your panic level can never drop below your morale level, so he has no choice but to reduce his morale to 2. And so I've put a little star by his name as a reminder to myself that he's going to need one of these little counters when we next go into action, because his morale has been affected by the traumatic experience he's been through. So going on through the men, Private Solovyv was killed. Private Christov, where are you, Christov? Anyone seen Christov? Christov, another man who routed out, I believe, during the first action as well. So Christov gets his route side ticked. And like Storchillo, he has to lose some morale before the next game. So yeah, they've become rather fragile, these poor guys. What about Nosenko? Where have you got to, Nosenko? Private Nosenko. Excellent. You are here and you survived. So in Nosenko's case, we do something a little bit different. Now, he won the scenario. Well, we won the scenario, so he gets a little Elan point for that. He was unpinned at the end of the scenario, so I'll give him 2 more checks. He didn't kill anyone in close combat, and he certainly didn't do any infiltrating, but good on him. He got 3 Elan points for getting through that. He also gets a check in his survival box. And he would get a check in his promotion box if he'd had enough Elan to bump up his morale or panic ratings. Now, you can bump them up by 1 for each 5 Elan points you trade in, but he didn't make quite enough Elan. And if the number of checks you have in your survival and promotion box equal 10, then you can rub that lot out and you can promote him. In this case, from a private, he would go up to corporal. But unfortunately, he's still on the ladder. What about Kvasnikov? Dear Kvasnikov. He survived the first part of the engagement, only to die in the second, so he too is off my roster. What of Private Sokolov? Sokolov survived, and like I mean, really, in keeping with Nosenko up there, he had very much the same experience. So I'm going to give him his 3 Elan points and his survival point. Zaharov. Zaharov was a bit of a champ. So he gets the points for being for winning the scenario, and also for being unpinned. Now, he was a bit lucky because, if you recall, he was one of the men who was pinned at the end of Battle 1, but because he went berserk and then subsequently won the engagement, I mean, in a way, because it was all one scenario technically, and he was unpinned at the end of the scenario, he gets that bonus anyway. But over the course of the action, Zaharov was the lead man who killed 2 Germans. So he in close combat. So he gets 4 victory points per victim. Sorry, not victory points, Elan points. So let's give him those now. So a total of 8. Now that is very impressive. So, what to do with Zaharov? He's got 11 Elan points. Well, I think he is going to cash in most of those because he'd be silly not to. Let's just get those. So he's got 1 left over. And not unnaturally, I think the most logical thing to do would be to take his morale up to 5 and his panic up to 6. So old Zaharov has done very well for himself. And of course, those 2 upgrades earn him 2 promotion points. So he is slowly on his way to promotion, if he lives. Private Zyakov had a slightly less dramatic time of things. So he gets his 3 Elan points and he gets a tick for survival. Private Wihailoft, much the same. So there we are. What of Private Nezovich? He was another survivor. So I'll give him his 3 Elan points and his survival. Junior Sergeant Aliv. Oh dear, talk about not setting a great example. But at least it means we still have a squad leader. So he routed out, unfortunately. So in consequence of that, what happens to him is he loses something. His morale is not that brilliant, so I am going to take him down on panic to 3. Oh yes, I've been forgetting. If you rout out, you lose any accumulated Elan points, but you still get your survival point. So, of course, I mean, not that Aliv did anything all that useful, but, you know, he wandered out of the smoke and dust when it was all over. And it does mean that rather than just 6, I have 9 men left in my squad. So we're not looking too shabby, all things considered. Now, so that was Aliv. What about Igorsky? Igorsky died during the first battle. And what about Borisov? Borisov was also a casualty. So, I have an understrength squad of 9 men. I do have the option of bringing in more from the reserves, and it would probably be a good idea if I did so, because at the moment what I have is a group of, I'll just pull the camera back a bit so you can see all my fellows. I effectively have 7 riflemen and 2 men with machine pistols. So if I wish, I can bring some reserves back in order to oh yes, before I do anything else, let me just put little stars to remind me that some men will need new morale and panic tokens. Obviously, you've got people like Zaharov, who's a much more impressive specimen than Storchillo. And Aliv is another one who's going to need something to reflect his changed combat ratings, or I should say morale and panic ratings. So, replacements. Now, I am able to use any of the blank unused people, and I just want a quick look at them. Because I do need I mean, I have got Aliv, who's my squad leader now. He's inherited the mantle from the late lamented Sergeant Rostov. Tempted to go with Burlak, because he is a useful guy to have. But he is a junior sergeant, which would clash with Aliv. I don't really want to do that, so much as I'm tempted, I might leave that one for now. Petrovsky is not a bad fellow. I mean, I could do with another rifleman. He's got very good ratings as an infantryman, but the other problem we face is that we are conscript still. Yes, we've won a battle, but we are still very much a conscript formation. So because he's not any kind of squad leader, Petrovsky's morale rating is a bit high. So I think we wouldn't have him in there. It's the same story with the other two, the next two in the line. Chernenko and Vakuta are good soldiers, but I don't think that such men would be assigned to fill out a 2/3 strength bunch of conscripts. And also, I don't really feel I need more rifles. I need a bit more long range offensive punch. I am tempted by Corporal Semenov, because in terms of the squad command structure, he does not get in the way of Junior Sergeant Aliv, and he develops some very useful firepower with his 1910 Maxim. So I'm going to put Corporal Semenov in. So what I am going to do is just, now hang on, I just need to double check what happens with replacements, because I'm sure there is a penalty. Yes, that's fine. He's not technically a replacement as such, because I haven't had to resurrect a previously killed man. So I can fill out my squad with Semenov. He is a corporal. His KIA rating is 8. His morale is 4. And his panic is 4. Okay. That brings my squad strength up to 10. Now I'm beginning to wonder, will I want some specialized weapons people? Because I could give myself a flamethrower as well if I'm feeling a bit ambitious, but I think we are not likely to be going on too many offensive missions in the near future, so I'm going to leave Kirilenko out of it. You also don't want a squad dominated by too many specialist weapons. I think one might be enough, to be honest. We have got Private Mikhailov, but again, I don't know about an anti-tank rifle. It's not the kind of thing that I'm expecting to need, and also I don't know whether they justify the points cost invested in them. So there's a lot to think about, really. because you do end up having to consider some of these things, and you can. I mean, you could go for a slightly wacky squad, but I don't really want to do that because it's a bit ahistorical. And I think most of my conscripts would be riflemen, and I believe that it would be about the best I could get to have a bloke with a medium machine gun there. So yes, I think we'll stick with that and just pad out the rest with riflemen. So I mean, I don't want a commissar; they're just bad news, really. I will take Private Pujorni because a an additional machine pistol is probably not a bad idea. So Private Pujorni could join in. Just pencil in his stats there. And you are morale of 4 and panic of 5. He's quite a tough cookie, about as tough as you are allowed to have in a squad of conscripts. And then there's Private Baibakov as well. Yeah, he's another one I like the look of. Morale is not quite so strong, but you know, it's another machine pistol to balance out my MMG and other rifles. So, yes, let's put Baibakov in. So morale is 3 and panic rating is 3. Private Korniev looks good too. You can see I'm just padding him in for numbers now because he's quite low morale, but you know, he'll do. So I realise you can't see the bottom of my squad anymore, but I'll pan out towards the end so you can see all 15 of my chaps. So Korniev, welcome to the team. I'm not sure how much you appreciate the honour of serving, but there we go. I don't need another sergeant, and I have already got a corporal, and I don't really want another one complicating matters, so we can leave you out. The other thing I don't want to do, given that there'll no doubt be other battles ahead, is that I don't want to overstaff my squad now with people who I may not need. And because if I do once more suffer horrific losses, you start losing victory points if you bring back previously eliminated personalities. Now, that is allowed under the rules. You just make the assumption that they're replaced by a newbie with a different name if you want. But there is a victory point penalty if you blow through your campaign roster too quickly. So I feel that the men I have got so far, that is my squad there on the left. You know, 13 men out of 15, out of the regulation 15 is not bad. And I think we're a good mix of close range firepower, long range rifles. We've got the MMG for our balance. We are lacking in any kind of projectile support, but I think I'm not going to worry about that for now. So, the only other thing to consider when you're keeping track of a campaign game and filling out the roster is your victory points. Now, I'm playing obviously solitaire, so I'm not keeping a campaign roster or victory points for the Germans. But just to go through the motions, I'm going to be recording my own victory points. So the first thing you get is if you won the scenario, it's 12 points, which, yay, we did. There are penalties if you had an infantry gun or an armoured fighting vehicle and you lost one of those. Now, you do suffer penalties for the number of men you suffered killed in action. So 12, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my 12 victory points is reduced to 6 by my losses. And there would have been further reductions if I'd had to resurrect previously wiped out personnel, or worse, transfer in a new squad leader or assistant squad leader. Thankfully, because Junior Sergeant Alif scampered away and hid, we have his inspiring leadership back now. Not so sure about that, but at least I don't have to suffer a penalty. So I'm just going to record down here that my current campaign VP is 6. And of course, had I been playing a live German opponent, he would have been recording his own campaign results. And to be perfectly honest, the poor fellow would have had a much more doleful picture than I would, because having been defeated in the action, his various penalties and also his options from what was left would be somewhat limited. So there we go. That is my new squad with replacements put in. As I say, I'm going to keep the. I tell you what, I'll just move this one guy here and zoom in so you can actually get a clear view of what I've been fiddling with and trying to set up. There we are. So that is, I hope, my battle-ready squad next for the prepped for the next mission. As I said right at the beginning, this is going to be an extremely short campaign mission with campaign with only 2 missions to it. So the first mission we've played, and soberingly, I suffered nearly 50% losses in that one. The next mission is going to be a very different one. So I'm making the assumption that despite my successful defense in my particular area, the overall picture is bleak. The Russian forces continue to be driven back by the Germans. And like most of the rest of our parent formation, we are falling back towards the Volga. So this is a new position that we've occupied, let's say some 30, 40 miles away from where we fought the previous battle. But this time the situation is going to be more fluid because there's a great deal more uncertainty, both about our own dispositions and also the German advance. So I've decided that the next mission is going to be a patrol mission. And it is just going to be a meeting of patrols between a regular German squad and my squad. But I am going to take the opportunity to cover the night rules, which I'm quite fond of playing with because they're pretty fun. But they're not something I've ever shown on this series before. So we are going to go out and put some feelers out to try and see what the Germans are up to. And of course, Lady Luck, being the fickle individual that she is, unknown to us, the Germans have had exactly the same idea and are sending out a reconnaissance of their own to try and feel for our latest defensive line. So I think that's going to be an interesting one. I hope it pans out that way. I'm looking forward to playing with the medium machine gun at any rate. And we'll see how we go. We'll also see what state my poor squad is in at the end of the meeting of patrols scenario. Now, I'm afraid it's not something I'm going to be able to do anytime soon because of time pressures. But I hope to have that scenario played perhaps by the coming weekend and uploaded at the same time. But meanwhile, I hope that this quick foray into the paperwork has been useful. Don't be put off by how daunting these campaign game rosters look and the sort of ultra small text in the rulebook detailing their use. Once you get used to how all this works, it's actually very well thought out and pretty intuitive. So I would say if you've got this game and you've never tried a campaign before, it is worth it. You can make them as long or as short as you like. I mean, my old British campaign was supposed to have run on for, I think, eight scenarios. Never got anywhere near that, but I planned out that many, and who knows, I might return to it someday. But yes, you can do so much with campaigns, and you can either use the scenarios that are included in the rule book, or there are very comprehensive guidelines included as to how you might design your own. There's nothing stopping you from using any of the rules governing different kinds of terrain, different kinds of environmental conditions. Now, I'm just going for a plain summer night out somewhere in the Soviet Union, but if you wanted to get more complex than that, again, there's nothing stopping you, and that's one of the great beauties of Upfront. So I am looking forward, perhaps with some trepidation, because I have become rather fond of these guys, to how they perform in what's going to be their last mission. I'm not entirely sure whether I will carry on the campaign after the next mission, because the assumption, it's a rather depressing assumption, is that if this squad does well in the next mission and comes through it victorious and reasonably intact, they're going to be among the many tens of thousands who end up being sucked into the bloody defense of Stalingrad, during which I imagine that they would be burned up quite quickly. But I'll have a think about whether I want to pursue it that far. For now, their orders, following a bit of a pat on the head for winning the previous battle, are to continue to annoy the Germans and to slow their progress to the Volga as much as possible. And I do wish them luck. We'll see what happens in the next battle. So that's it for this video. Thank you all very much for joining me. As always, a big hello to my regulars and much appreciation to you for dropping by. Always good to see you. And a massive hello to anyone who might be visiting my channel for the first time. If this is the first video you're watching, it probably won't make much sense. Please do have a look at some of the others, because that will at least give you some context. And also, by all means, check out any of the other videos on the channel that you may find of interest. But above all, thank you very much for stopping in. I hope you'll come back again. Much appreciate all of you tuning in. Take care and look forward to meeting up with you soon. Bye.